tonight I'm going to be talking about a daily reader, specifically the daily reader that I use, The Language of Letting Go by Melanie Beatty. But I'm also going to be talking about the practice of a daily reader, or the practice of various kinds of mindfulness techniques. I'm also going to share with you a handful of daily readings to give you an example of them. And I picked a few things. I took one of my favorite daily readings that's not from Melanie Beatty. I picked a handful that are from Melanie Beatty, and I also just chose the dates for today. Now, you can buy this book in paperback. You can also buy it as an app on your phone and have it come up once a day. So it'll just pop up on your phone, and you can read the daily reader that it comes up for that day, or when you get a chance to get to it. But I want to give you this option, and I want to start off with this idea. And again, this for me was really when the idea of mindfulness turned a corner for me, because I had this idea about mindfulness or a meditation as being something very formal, very rigid, and very narrow. And what I realized was that anything that causes my focus, my presence, to be in the here and now, and to feel and to think and to concentrate, can be a meditation. Anywhere from a mindful eating practice to what Buddhists will call a mindful walk, to a guided meditation, to a daily reader. I like Melanie Beatty because she gets it right almost all the time. And I love self-help authors that get it. It gives you a sense that they've done their work, that they do their work, and that you don't have to take everything they say as a matter of truth, but you can have some confidence that they're going to offer you ideas on a consistent basis that are wise and insightful. And Melanie Beatty does her own work, has done her own work, identifies herself as a codependent in recovery. So I think that's why I value her and her work so much. She's written, of course, the Bible of codependence, which is Codependent No More, and then the sequel, Beyond Codependency, among other things. So, when we talk about recovery, we talk about it being a practice, and not a arriving or becoming perfect, but about something that we do to practice a different way of thinking, a different way of being. And so, most importantly, as we set out on any kind of mindfulness practice, it's important that we adopt an attitude of compassion towards ourselves. And I think there might not be anything more important in our practice than the practice itself of compassion towards self. I think for a lot of us, in the way that we grew up or the way that we were coached or taught, we believe that we had to have a critical voice, a critical coach to want to improve, to motivate us to improve. And what we know is a more evolved way of being is doing it for compassion, doing it for love, doing it because it's liberating and freeing and brings us serenity and confidence and clarity, not because of the negativity that will come if we don't do it, not because of the negative consequences that will come. So we develop a practice, and we don't ever arrive. That's in essence what it means to be in recovery, right? That you're always working and you never arrive. And the idea that one can arrive makes one vulnerable to relapse, right? If I arrive in my practice of anything that I'm doing for my betterment, think about it anywhere from an exercise program to mental health maintenance to a spiritual practice. If I arrive, then the temptation is going to be, the risk is going to be that I'm done, that I don't have to do it anymore. And no matter what I'm talking about, all of us can relate to that idea of arriving versus making it a practice. We are wired neurologically to think differently in many cases than this kind of work asks us to think in. It wasn't because our parents were bad. It was because that's how they were wired. And going back generation after generation, oftentimes having its root originally in some kind of trauma. And so in other words, we have this legacy that has been passed down to us that comes from a trauma place. And when you look back at the history of humankind, you study any culture, you can see a tremendous amount of trauma in the culture. Wars and famines and disasters and suffering and slavery and on and on and on. There's a lot of trauma that gets passed down. And it's my experience in what I do, and probably because of what I do and where I do it, that each generation can improve a little bit. Each generation can remove or change the wiring, reprogram ourselves to think differently. I've talked lately about this metaphor of growing up in a certain soup, right? We're just around us. We're in it. It's the water. It's the water we swim in. It's the air we breathe. And so we don't know anything different. And it worked for previous generations. It may have even worked for us. But because our children are struggling, they pull us out of this context, out of this soup, this water, this air that we breathe, and they invite us into another context. And what I found, and I say and teach all the time, is the people that have the opportunity to go through this process with us are richer for it. So because we get a different kind of wiring. Again, it's about being reminded. It's about repetition. I've shared the experience that I have many friends who have been in recovery from alcohol and drugs, let alone other things, for decades, but attend still many meetings per week. And the reason they do that is because they know what their proclivity is. They know what their patterns are, and they go to a place to hear people talk and think differently. That's why a webinar, a book, a meeting can be helpful in our practice, in our journey. The vigilance of recovery models, and I've spoken to it already a little bit, but this idea, a lot of people feel that identifying oneself as an alcoholic or a codependent or a drug addict or a sex addict or a gambling addict, that it's a limiting, punitive, kind of shameful identification. But the way that people who identify that way use it is, it's something I've got to remind myself and kind of be vigilant against. Like, I have to develop a practice. It's similar to the idea of not arriving. I know that if I drink, the likelihood of ruining my life is off the charts. I know that when I get in relationships with people, that I tend to operate in codependent ways, right? Non-clear ways with boundaries. I overextend myself. I get into their circle. I try to control them, and on and on and on. Recognizing my triggers, recognizing my red flags when I'm starting into a kind of thinking relapse, and also knowing what resources in my life, calling my sponsor, attending a meeting, going to therapy, listening to a podcast, reading a book, all of those things, reaching out to somebody in my support network. So there's a humility to it. And it's not seen by those people as shameful or limiting. In fact, many people will say, for example, they'll use the phrase, I'm a grateful alcoholic. I'm a grateful addict. What they're saying is the discovery of this disease that they carry around inside of them brought them to a place that opened them up to an entirely spiritual, different world. What I hope can happen for the parents of the children out of Oak, becoming much more intentional and conscious about what we're doing, right? We can't take it for granted. We can't take our practice for granted. I talk about this idea about getting on the journey. I met with a father today of a student that I had 12 years ago, and he described how his son was doing in his life with a baby and successful, happy family and career, and how wonderful it was. And he talked about, he was introducing me to somebody else, and he was saying, Brad kind of has this sneaky way of getting parents to do their work, right? I call it the Trojan horse approach to family therapy, and he used some other phrase, some other analogy to describe it. But this idea that really this stuff that we do, that we're inviting you into, is about empowerment and liberation and rebirth. And I don't mean in some kind of mystical way. I mean in a literal way of looking at the world in a completely different way. And then some of you have that. And some of you have glimpses of that. And some of you, if you're new, may not have that at all. But you hear something that sounds a little different. And so what this is an invitation into a more conscious and a more intentional life, specifically starting with parenting. Being on the journey with your child, that's where I was at, is this idea of making your life your project. And I'll say this as clearly and emphatically as I possibly can. The most important thing, your child does not need you to be perfect or anywhere near perfect. If they need you to be perfect, they're doomed. What they need you to make your life your project and stop making their life your project. And when you do that, a tremendous amount of pressure is relieved off of their shoulders, off of their backs. And you have a much more powerful, profound, and positive effect on them. So you work on yourself. You show up. It's not one thing that you say or do. I talk about learning to apologize to your children, learning to be wrong, learning not to win. You don't get to be right. I talk about all those things. But it's really just about showing up as a project. Humble. Making mistakes, apologizing, and looking at yourself. Taking a daily inventory. Having some kind of practice. So that when your child says, "You're a pain in the neck, mom or dad," your response can be sincerely and in all humility, "You have no idea of my limitations. You haven't even scratched the surface. And I hear you." It's not like a fad diet. It's a new way of living, right? People that have a healthy relationship with their body and with food don't talk about dieting. They talk about a healthy relationship with their body, with food, with exercise, with movement. I'm going to share some of the examples from the Daily Reader that I use that I have installed on my phone. And like I said, mindfulness practices, I would want you to expand. I think therapy is a mindfulness practice. Reading is a mindfulness practice. Breathing can be a mindfulness practice. A daily reader can be a mindfulness practice, like I was describing earlier. So here's the cover of the book that I use. You can go to your app store on your iPhone, download it there. I think it's $7, and it comes up, like I said, every day. And then I think it's also available in the App Store for Android also. So I wanted to pick very organically the yesterday's Daily Reader, today's. I didn't look at them first. I decided that I was going to pull these out before I even saw what they were, to give you a sense of, if you were reading this on a daily basis, this is what you would have come across yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So yesterday was titled "Letting Things Happen." We do not have to work so hard at gaining our insights. Yes, we're learning that painful and disappointing things happen, often for a reason and a higher purpose. Yes, these things often work out for good, but we don't have to spend so much time and energy figuring out the purpose and plan for each detail of our life. That's hypervigilance. Sometimes the car doesn't start. Sometimes the dishwasher breaks. Sometimes we catch a cold. Sometimes we run out of hot water. Sometimes we have a bad day. While it helps to achieve acceptance and gratitude for these irritating annoyances, we don't have to process everything and figure out where it fits in the overall scheme of things. Solve the problem. Get the car repaired. Fix the dishwasher. Nurse yourself through a cold. Wait to take a shower until there's hot water. Nurture yourself through your bad day. Tend to your responsibilities. And don't take everything so personally. If we need to recognize a particular insight or awareness, we will be guided in that direction. Certainly, we want to watch for patterns, but often the big insights and the significant processing happens naturally. We don't have to question every occurrence to see how it fits into the plan. The plan, the awareness, the insight, the potential for personal growth will reveal itself to us. Perhaps the lesson is to learn to solve our problems without always knowing the significance. Perhaps the lesson is to trust ourselves to live and experience life. And then she always ends, Melody does, she always ends with a prayer or a meditation. Today, I will let things happen without worrying about the significance of each event. I will trust that this will bring about my growth faster than running around with a microscope. I will trust my lessons to reveal themselves in their own time. Interesting, when I first read this to prepare for this, I was thinking she was going to go to that place that everything has significance in the first couple of sentences. That's what I thought, but of course she was saying just the exact opposite, which was a relief for me to read. Today's daily reader. So, if something is meant for us today, this is what she's put in the book: taking care of ourselves. We often refer to recovery from codependency and adult child issues as self-care. Self-care is not, as some may think, a spin-off of the me generation. It isn't self-indulgence. It isn't selfishness, the negative interpretation of that word. We're learning to take care of ourselves instead of obsessively focusing on another person. We're learning self-responsibility instead of feeling excessively responsible for others. Self-care also means tending to our true responsibilities to others. We do this better. I love this part. We do this better when we're not feeling overly responsible. Self-care sometimes means me first, but usually it means me too. It means we are responsible for ourselves and can choose to no longer be victims. Self-care means learning to love the person that we're responsible for taking care of, ourselves. We do not do this to hibernate in a cocoon of isolation and self-indulgence. I love this part the most. We do it so that we can better love others and learn to let them love us. Self-care isn't selfish, it's self-esteem. And the prayer or meditation she has is, today, God, help me love myself. Help me let go of feeling excessively responsible for those around me. Show me what I need to do to take care of myself and be appropriately responsible for others. I think, again, I'm just giving you a flavor of it. It's a wonderful idea and concept. And I think she does so well to speak to the misunderstandings around some of the self-help language and pop psychology that's out there. Some of the very same kinds of misunderstandings that I think come when people first hear about recovery programs, recovery language. Tomorrow's daily reader, freedom. Many of us were oppressed and victimized as children. As adults, we may continue to keep ourselves oppressed. Some of us don't recognize that caretaking and not setting boundaries will leave us feeling victimized. Some of us don't understand that thinking of ourselves as victims will leave us feeling oppressed. Some of us don't know that we hold the key to our own freedom. That key is honoring ourselves and taking care of ourselves. We can say what we mean and mean what we say. We can stop waiting for others to give us what we need and take responsibility for ourselves. When we do, the gates to freedom will swing wide. Walk through. And then the meditation or the prayer. Today I will understand that I hold the key to my freedom. I will stop participating in my oppression and victimization. I will take responsibility for myself and let others do as they may. Again, she subtly throughout challenges the thinking errors that are inherent in us codependents. Us who grew up in families where boundaries weren't respected, where selves weren't acknowledged, where there was one right way and it was what the parents thought, where we had a misunderstanding about what it meant to love somebody else and be in relationship with another person. I think she does a fantastic job of explaining that here. I brought in another reader. Somebody shared with me at one of our intensives not too long ago, and I copied it down, and I thought it was a fantastic. It was actually a daily reader at the beginning of one of our Finding You workshops, and it set a fantastic tone for the entire workshop, and I wanted to share it with you. And for me, this speaks really well to looking back at the past, looking where we came from, looking at our childhood, but not in a way, again, that a lot of people might think is limiting, is blaming, is being stuck in. By Gay Hendricks, from A Year of Living Consciously. Honor your roots of the past, the truths and experiences that form your history. That about you that is deep in the heart of life, that is rooted deep in the heart of life. Even though you may wish to let go of parts of you, especially parts of your past, the only things to be released are behaviors. Your history and memories cannot be released. They are in you and of you, as certainly as your heart, and you would be wise to recognize their permanence. This is not to say that you must allow your past to rule you. Instead, you must learn to be ever vigilant in order to honor your past and keep it from being your present or determining your future. It's a beautiful thought. You must allow your past, excuse me, I'm going to read that again. You must learn to be ever vigilant in order to honor your past and keep it from being your present or determining your future. For example, many people struggle in relationship with their parents. And working through my own parental issues and in helping many others do the same, I have learned that what heals me is to honor my feelings about my parents, whether deep pain or deep gratitude, at the same time that I honor my parents themselves just as they are. By doing so, I nourish the deep roots of myself and the roots of those who have nourished me. You know, what I'm aware of as I read several of these readings is the dialecticals, right? The seemingly opposites that seem exclusive of each other, but that can both be present. You know, when even the idea that the title of this book, Learning to Let Go, the idea of surrender, the idea of self-care being both loving and recognizing our responsibility to others and taking responsibility for taking care of ourselves. All of those ideas. Somebody in recovery, somebody that is letting go, isn't passive, they're courageous. Listen to the language of these people. They're courageous, they're articulate, they step forward, they're assertive in their relationships and their behavior. I have a few various quotes from some that I took. From one called Tolerance. Tolerate our quirks, our feelings, our reactions, our peculiarities, our humanness. Tolerate our ups and downs, our resistance to change, our struggling and sometimes awkward nature. Tolerate our fears, our mistakes, our natural tendency to duck from problems and pain. Tolerate our hesitancy to get close, expose ourselves, and be vulnerable. Tolerate our need to occasionally feel superior, to sometimes feel ashamed, and to occasionally share love as an equal. Tolerate the way we progress, a few steps forward and a couple back. Again, this goes to the idea of compassion towards self. And to continue, she says, tolerate our instinctive desire to control and how we reluctantly learn to practice detachment. Tolerate the way we say we want love and then sometimes push others away. Tolerate our tendency to get obsessive, forget to trust God, and occasionally get stuck. Some things we do not tolerate. Do not tolerate abusive or destructive behaviors toward ourselves or others or ourselves. Practice healthy, loving tolerance of ourselves, said one man. When we do, we'll learn tolerance for others. Then take it one step further. Learn that all the humanness we're tolerating is what makes ourselves and others beautiful. Today I will be tolerant of myself. From that I will learn appropriate tolerance for others. I've said this recently at a training that so much, even with therapists, there's an instinct for us to look at our symptoms, our behaviors, our missteps, our mistakes with disdain. And so much of my work is to provide a different kind of response, a different kind of context, even with therapists that I'm training, to have compassion for the symptom and the wound that it represents, to have patience for ourselves and for others. And in that compassion, in that patience, in that tolerance, we create a healing place for people. And so oftentimes people come to me in lots of capacities, asking me, how do I get rid of this? How do I get rid of that? I hate this part of me. I hate when I do this or that thing. I did this terrible thing. And so I just step to the side and say, well, let's first look at it. How does it make sense? Why did you do it? Not from a shaming kind of questioning why, but why did you do it? Where did it come from? And we can almost always, relatively quickly, arrive at a sensitive, soft place. And you know what would happen if we always operated this way with ourselves? We would just show up as honest. Yes, we would stumble, we would make mistakes, we'd be imperfect, but we would apologize quickly, without ego, without the negative side effects of shame and guilt. We would know that we are essentially trying to be as loving and as kind as we can, and yet we would also know at the same time that we have limitations And so it would be so easy to be in honest, authentic relationships with each other. Another couple of thoughts. I have two more thoughts to share with you, two more of her thoughts, Melanie Beatty's thoughts. From one on something, from one on pain. She starts off, some of my feelings have been stored so long, they have freezer burn. There are many sources of pain in our life. Those of us recovering from adult children and codependency issues frequently have a cesspool of unresolved pain from the past. We have feelings, sometimes from early childhood to the present, that either hurt too much to feel that we had no support or permission to deal with. There are other inevitable sources of pain in our life too. There's a sadness and a grief that comes when we experience change, even good change, as we let go of one part of our life and begin our journey into the new. There is pain in recovery, as we begin allowing ourselves to feel while dropping our protective shield of denial. There is pain that leads and guides us to better choices in the future. We have many choices about how to stop this pain. We may have experimented with different options. Compulsive and addictive behaviors stop pain temporarily. We may have used alcohol, other drugs, relationships, or sex to stop our pain. We may talk compulsively or compulsively focus on other people and their needs as a way to avoid our pain. We may use religion to avoid our feelings. We may resort to denial of how we are feeling to stop our pain. We may stay so busy that we don't have time to feel. We may use money, exercise, or food to stop our pain. What I'm finding as I'm reading this is I've used every single one of these things in my life. We may have choices. We have many choices to survive. We may have used some of these options, only to find that these were Band-Aids, temporary pain relievers that did not solve the problem. They did not really stop our pain. They postponed it. In recovery, there's a better choice about how we may stop pain. We can face it and feel it. When we are ready, with our higher power's help, we can summon the courage to feel the pain, let it go, and let the pain move us forward into a new decision, a better life. We can stop the behaviors that we are doing that cause pain. If that's appropriate, we can make a decision to remove ourselves from situations. So again, it's a great, sometimes non-intuitive way to think about it. And one thing that's consistent in the language of recovery, in the language of a meditation practice like this, is humility, right? It's so easy to see that I believe, I'm not sure that I took perfect track as I was reading, but that I've used all of these medicators at times in my life to avoid. I've even used my own education as a therapist to avoid. And so that kind of humility, that kind of we're all in this together, is something that we can share. And what I hope really comes across for all the parents that come across these webinars, these podcasts, our Evoke therapy programs, is a sense that we're in this together, that you're not alone, that we're all human brothers and sisters, and that when you look at everybody's underbelly, it looks very similar, right? We're dealing with similar core insecurities and fears and difficulties. We have very diverse styles. The specifics of our stories are very different, but a lot of the core themes are so present. So, and if we could also, let down the walls, the defenses, because of the stigma and shame, we would find ourselves so much more connected to each other. Another one, finding our own truth. We may want to make it easier. We may nervously run to friends asking them to give us their truth or make our discovery easier. They cannot. Light will shed itself in its own time. Each of us has our own share of truth waiting to reveal itself to us. Each of us has our own share of light waiting for us to stand in it, to claim it as ours. Encouragement helps. Support helps. A firm belief that each person has truth available, appropriate to each situation, is what will help. Each experience, each frustration, each situation has its own truth waiting to be revealed. Don't give up until you find it. Find it for yourself. We shall be guided into truth if we are seeking it. We are not alone. And then the prayer that comes with it: today I will search for my own truth, and I will allow others to do the same. I will place value on my vision and the vision of others. We are each on the journey making our own discoveries, the ones that are right for us today. Again, I think they're powerful ideas and concepts. Even as I went over this and read several of these in preparation for today, I found myself swimming in the new water. I found myself in a different soup, reminding myself of what it means to think in a different way, in a healthier way. A couple more. I had a couple more than I thought, and I'll just visit on on two more. One on shame, and she has a lot on shame because it's the kind of source of so much of our issues. Shame can hold us back, she says, hold us down and keep us staring at our feet. Watch out for shame. Many systems and people reek of shame. They are controlled by shame and may want us to play their game with them. They may be hoping to hook us and control us through shame. We don't have to fall into their shame. Instead, we'll take the good feelings, self-acceptance, love, and nurturing. Compulsive behaviors, sexually addictive behaviors, overeating, chemical abuse, and addictive gambling are shame-based behaviors. If we participate in them, we will feel ashamed. It's inevitable. We need to watch out for addictive and compulsive behaviors because those will immerse us in shame. And lastly, letting go. Stop trying so hard to control things. It's not our job to control people, outcomes, circumstances, life. Maybe in the past we couldn't trust and just let things happen, but we can now. The way life is unfolding is good. Let it unfold. Stop trying so hard to do better, be more. Who we are and the way we do things is good enough for today. Who we were and the way we did things yesterday was good enough for that day. Ease up on ourselves. Let go. Stop trying so hard. And the meditation today, I will let go. I will stop trying to control everything. I will stop trying to make myself be and do better. I will let myself be. And ironically, it is in that letting go that we enlarge ourselves, that we awaken, that we evolve, that we become more and more enlightened. So what are the takeaways? Create rituals in your lives. There is no one right way to practice recovery as a human being. Everybody has their own. I don't know your truth. I can share with you some of the things that I try, some of the things that I do, some of the things that others have done, but I don't know what will work for you. You will find what works for you. But create rituals and practices, because if we only do it in crisis, it doesn't really allow us to change. It has to be something that we do regularly, that we practice with some regularity. Find your own individual program. And embrace a new way of living a little bit at a time. It really is. The idea in parenting, the idea in this work, is it's a better way to live. One of my difficulties with therapy at times and parent coaching, as I've seen it executed in the world, is that it is a therapist coming at a client, telling them what the truth is, the way it should be. Simple cause and effects. It's like they're giving them a recipe that if they follow for life, everything will turn out wonderful, including those things that are outside of their control, versus exploring ideas and principles that help us to become more free, like self-compassion, like learning to embrace pain, learning to grieve, and so forth. And when we live in this better way, we have an impact on those around us. Be compassionate with yourself. You're doing the best you can at any given moment, and you can do better at any given moment. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Learning to embrace that dialectical is critical in the practice. Learning about who you are, a gift for you and for your children. And children don't become who we tell them to be. They become who we are to some degree. They swim around in the water that we create, the soup that we have, the air that we breathe. And they can, like you, do work to get out of that, right? I mean, that's what we're asking them to do, what we're asking you to do. But it's inevitable that each family will have its own dents, its own bruises, its own stink, its own special gifts and resourcefulness. All right. I'm going to do my best to go over the questions that have come in because I'm moderating for myself. What's the name of the app or book again? I'll go to the picture. It's called The Language of Letting Go by Melanie Beatty. Another comment from a parent. Thank you for this webinar. Each time we meet, I know I am meeting with people who understand or who are coming to understand doing our work. Yesterday, I met with my financial planner, and he saw how much I spent in 2017 on therapy. His comment, have you talked to the therapist about when you will no longer need this service? My response, I will most likely be doing this for the remainder of my life. He was shocked, totally does not understand. I started to feel shame, but I know I am doing what I need to do for myself and my relationship with my son. By the way, I went to an Al-Anon meeting last night to be around others that are doing their own work. Wonderful. And wonderful story with your financial planner. And totally impressed with your awareness that you started to take on the shame that he was projecting into you, and that you were also able to stay clear enough from it. So great job. The daily reader I quoted was A Year of Living Consciously. That's just a book by Gay Hendricks. Can you explain a bit more about how addiction comes from shame? My son will say he had some really good times when he uses, and that's why staying clean is a struggle. Thank you. It's not a conscious process. Shame is subtle. Shame is not something that it's about being good. It's about being something we're not. It's about not being comfortable with who we are. So it's very subtle, and people who haven't done a lot of work don't see their shame. And the only way that I can tell you that I can describe it in a person is to do work with them as a therapist. To find moments and say, did you hear what you just said? And to point out and say, you're just saying you're not good enough, or you should have done something else. Or gosh, you're beating yourself up for making a mistake that we all make more than once. Or that you need to impress somebody. Or you can't just show up who you are. Or you're too sensitive, or you're too melodramatic, or you're too selfish, or you're too this, or you're too that. Right? So it's a subtle process that I have found that the only way to kind of learn about it and discover it is to do a lot of work. I'm not talking about the fact that, yes, people that use, even long-term spiritually recovering alcoholics and addicts, will absolutely tell the funniest of war stories. And they would say, if it didn't destroy their life, they would do it still, because there were some good times. But at the root of it, at the root of an addictive disorder is shame. That is why I believe the fourth and the fifth step of the 12 steps, making a fearless, courageous moral inventory of all the wrongdoings and sharing it with somebody else, and then later on making amends. That's why it's so critical. Writing down everything as courageously as you can that you've done to other people, to yourself, and sharing it with at least one other person is critical. Looking at it is liberating and out of it. So it's a great question, and the answer is difficult because it's individual and it's subtle and it's insidious and it's nearly invisible without, in my experience, without working with somebody else on it. Another comment, lately when I meditate in an effort to be mindful, I am 80% in the thought stream and 20% out of it in the breath. Do I fake it till I make it, or dig deeper and see what's really keeping me distracted? I mean, I think both can be true. Pay attention to where you are. Notice where you are. Notice where your mind goes. Be gentle with yourself as you bring yourself back to the breath. Notice that you might only be 20% in your breath. and just observe. It really is an observation of what Buddhists call the monkey mind, the crazy thoughts that go on inside of ourselves, and sit with it and watch it and notice it. This is my 4th year, one parent says, through Beatty's book. It helps me to take life one day at a time. Just be today. Every day the message applies scarily, sometimes. Each year time I read a passage, there's a new meaning as my growth has evolved and my journey's experience has taught me a new way to see. Thank you for sharing and helping with parents. Not feel so alone through webinars and books like this. Oh, the second, thank you for that. Thank you for the comment. I have a similar experience. I've been reading this for 10 years. And I can't believe going through it again and again and again, how rich it is, how amazing it is, how clear it is. The second book, other than the babies, yeah, A Year of Living Consciously was the one by Gay Hendricks. Language of Letting Go, Codependence, No More, and Beyond Codependency. Those were the Beatty books. Those are all the books I've talked about. I've often thought that the best words in the English language are, "You are not alone." Thank you for holding this space for all of us. I've also noticed that you in the webinars lately for and on behalf of children, thank you for doing this work. It chokes me up every time I hear it. Thank you for the acknowledgement of the work that we all do. Thank you. And you are not alone is a truth. It's important. All right. Upcoming announcements and events. We would like all parents to go to 6 12-step support groups. If you haven't started now, please start. If you haven't done it, please try it just 6 times. If nothing else, you'll get a little bit of empathy about what your child is being asked to do. And don't be surprised if the same thoughts, feelings, excuses, defenses for attending sound a lot like your child's excuses, defenses for not doing his or her work. You can listen to these broadcasts always through the podcasts. We put them up the next mid-morning. If you have an iPhone or an iOS device, go to the podcast app and search Evoke Therapy Programs. On an Android device, download the SoundCloud app. Or on a computer, go to soundcloud.com. You can listen there. And on all of those apps, search Evoke Therapy Programs. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Evoke Therapy. Facebook, search Evoke Therapy Programs. The Evoke Family Foundation on Facebook is for parents, for individuals who can't afford therapy. And then, of course, new content is on our blog. My book, The Journey of the Rural Parent, is available on Amazon. You can buy it from our account there. If you go to the paperback, the new options underneath the main title, click there, and you can buy them from Evoke Therapy Programs there. They are available now. Plenty of copies available. You can also buy an audio version or a CD version. Upcoming Finding You. If you want to do a deep dive, you want to do your own work, you want a therapy accelerator. Our next Finding You is May 2nd through 6th. I've listed on the slide if you're watching the webinars with me. Our June, August, October, November, and December dates. Go to our website if you want to learn more. We have a Finding You 2 that we'll be scheduling. We've gotten a great response from graduates of Finding You, so we'll be scheduling one late summer, early fall. You can also do a private family intensive, although I will tell you, as a rule, I would encourage you to do Finding You even before a private family intensive. If you're a professional watching or listening to this broadcast, our next availability for our women's group is May 20th through 22nd. Our next men's group is June 10th through 12th. That is for professionals in the therapeutic industry. Learn more by going to our website or emailing us at intensives@evoketherapy.com. I'll be in New York this Monday, the 23rd, 7 to 9, at our usual spot at the City University of New York in Midtown. Seattle on May 12th, we'll have somebody there. Denver, I'll be in Denver on Monday, May 14th. And we're going to have a Bay Area one scheduled real soon. Email Melanie at evoketherapy.com if you want to know more information or to RSVP. Our upcoming workshop is April 21st through 22nd. That's coming right around the corner. There's still availability to attend. We would like all current families, if possible, to attend this multifamily, experiential, educational, inspirational workshop. You can also attend it you can time it so that you can also have a meeting with your child. If your Evoke Therapy says that the timing works out, contact Gail at evoketherapy.com for more information, or to RSVP. Pursuit trips are available for families or young adults. Any other questions that have come up? Looks like no. I will be talking this Thursday evening at 7 p.m., Thursday, April 19th, about grit, resilience, and the research, the most recent research about the efficacy of wilderness therapy, specifically as it relates to fostering those traits in our children and in ourselves, really. So again, thank you for joining us. For and on behalf of your children, I thank you for the work, for the courage that you're doing. It's an incredible gift, and you're not alone in it. I'm with you in it. Have a great couple of days, and I'll talk to you Thursday night. Take care. Bye-bye.